Hi guys, Tugri here with a new video, and this video will be my patch preview for January 10th, where I'm going to give you my opinion about those changes. We have PvP changes and also normal changes, but they will also affect PvP. And I want to give you my insight, at least I want to give you my opinion about it and how it might affect the meta. In my opinion, I glossed over the changes and it will change, the meta will change, and for the better or for the worse, depending on the persons that are actually watching the video or at least reading the patch notes. I'm going to give it also in the description, you will see the link so you can actually go back and watch it yourself or read it like calmly if you want. But let's start right away with the Demon Hunter changes. So we have, you also see in the timestamps whenever I'm talking about specific classes. So Demon Hunter, the hunt's damage over time effect no longer deals an additional tick on application, so it means that whenever you are going to get hit by the hunt, you will not get the dot effect at the same time. It will just reduce the burst in general. It's a pretty big nerf, to be honest, because you could be critted by the hunt for 150k, for example, and then get critted by the dot by 50k, and generally it is enough to actually like put so much pressure. Now that's going to be removed. The damage dealt over the total duration remains unchanged, but at least the burstiness that can be applied because of it is going to be reduced. So you will be able to actually recover from the hunt. I don't think the hunt is the thing that is actually making Demon Hunter S tier, but it does help to have so much damage that you can actually put pressure just because of one button, right? Vengeance Demon Hunter, not interested by the changes. Feral Druids, all ability damage increased by 3%. I mean, that's PvE, I guess, but PvP 3%. It is noticeable, but I don't think Feral actually need that damage buff, but that's my opinion, of course. I think they will still be S tier, in my books at least. It is very strong. It does immense pressure at all times, to be honest. And it is very, very hard to actually catch a Feral Druid, depending on the specs that you are actually playing. A caster in 2v2 versus a Feral Druid, uptime is very, very wary. They can just run around pillars and come back whenever they have Feral Frenzy with Adaptive Swarm, and that's pretty much enough to actually like kill you at one point of the game. In 3v3, it's a bit different. They will not kite you all the time, but they would like put immense AoE pressure that, to be honest, you are the one that is going to kite the damage probably. Devastation, fire breath increased. It's not PvP. Lay waste increases deep breath damage by 15 or 30%. Was 10-20%. Increased damage from deep breath. Deep breath does a lot of damage, and it can really burst down. I think it's still a burst down class or spec. Outside of the burst, you're not going to really kill someone, but it is still possible to do that. And they're also like increasing the consistent damage. Like in 30, it surge damage increased by 10%. Firestorm, I think that's something you're not going to cast most of the time. I think I don't play Devastation, to be honest, but I never see Firestorm or Storm on details. I think it's a modifier for something, maybe. So that's increased. Eye of Infinity generates 2 instances on critical strike, was 1 instance. I guess that's good for, again, regeneration of those essences. Spellweaver's Dominance also increased critical strike damage 10%. It's quite big, to be honest, in PvP, so that might be noticeable. And Iridescence damage bonus increased to 20%. So in general, I think all of this is consistent damage, and then this is applied also for burst. Hunter, we have survival hunters actually getting a buff, so 2% more damage. Butchery and Carve is pretty much for PvE. Fury of the Eagle, I don't know if it's going to be good for PvP. We will have to see the actual numbers. I feel like most hunters are not playing with Fury of the Eagle. And Wildfire Bomb damage increased by 15%. I think in general it's going to be a very good buff because you have a lot of modifiers around Wildfire Bomb. Mages, Fire Mages, pretty much only PvE changes. Frost Mages, Frost Bolts damage increased by 20%, Ray of Frost damage increased by 40%, and Glacial Spike damage increased by 10%. Ray of Frost will be busted. You will have to kick it. It will be doing too much damage. Frostbolt, I think it's still going to be very filler. It's not never going to be hitting the same kind of damage as in Shadowlands, except if they're going to do a 50% increase, for example, then it will be like Shadowlands level of damage. But right now, Real Frost is going to be very interesting for Frost Mages, I think. And Glacial Spike is going to get increased, but it will be offset with the PvP changes that you will see a bit later in the video. Brewmaster, efficacy of Stagger, I don't know what this is. Celestial Brew, I don't know what it is, but it's still tank changes, so I don't know if it's going to be very valuable for PvP. Mistweavers, they get increased healing. I don't think the throughput is a problem in PvP, but that's a PvE change, I guess. And they get also a lot of like damage modifiers, but again, if they're playing fist weaving, basically if they get more damage, it will be also healing for more. What they do need is somewhat of a smart heal. On those fist weaving ancient teachings healings, because sometimes you can heal someone that is full HP, and then sometimes you're just healing that one that is really low HP, and then you're going to do a big burst healing, but you cannot decide about that. And that's very random. And if you're doing a Rising Sun kick and it's healing the wrong target, it is really bad, and it is noticeable how bad it can be. Retribution Paladin. So we have a few buffs, and I saw the video of Enruki. He's a bit bombastic about Retribution. I don't know why, because to be honest, mages should not really struggle versus paladins. But in general, Crusader Strike getting an increase by 40% is not going to change anything. It is still a filler spell. You might maybe use it a bit more as priority, maybe, and still, I think Blade of Justice, this is a great buff because it does get increased by the 4 set. But in general, Crusader Strike is not going to be the thing that is going to kill you. If you're going to get killed by Crusader Strike, I think the problem is elsewhere, right? So 40%, very good. So I want to have filler spells that are worth to actually cast and to actually do damage with. And Crusader Strike is one of them that it could need a big buff just to have like a feel of I'm pressing a spell, it does damage. Right now, it's not the case. You're just basically buffing yourself with strength and basically getting holy power. That's your Crusader Strike like spell. It's not about the damage. And Blade of Justice, it can do a lot of damage, to be honest, and that 25% will be noticeable, but it will still not be on par with other spells from other specs. Like, for example, Overpower from ARMS Warrior is a bit of the same vein as Blade of Justice because it is a filler spell. It is to build up, like, let's say, your more strike damage. Here it's to build up your holy power, and it does less damage than an overpower, for example. So I think with these changes, it could go towards that overpower status from ARMS Warrior. But I'm talking about a spell, not about overpowered, like, right? But again, those changes are not going to change the aspect of ARMS Warrior, I mean Retribution Paladin, because they do not have mobility. The one thing I don't understand is Final Reckoning damage increased by 15%. I think, first and foremost, Final Reckoning, you do that for the damage, but importantly for the second factor, which is the holy power spending abilities to increase that damage. And often not with Radiant Decree, it can result to pretty nasty one-shots, two-shots, right? So I don't feel like the damage increase is something that you want to do, but I mean, that's probably for PvE as well. But yeah, there is something that they should maybe think. I think, like it said here, we are looking at Retribution as a whole, and we'll have more to share in the future. I think they will rework somehow, some way. I think the talents. And I think they should add a bit of mobility, because it is annoying to really not move. It is, freedom is just not enough. But that's another topic, right? Shield of Vengeance cooldown reduced to 90 seconds. It becomes like a 1.5 minute CD, which is going to be noticeable. But again, Shield of Vengeance, it does get popped in 1 or 2 globals. With my ARMS Warrior, I just do Wrecking Throw, and that Shield of Vengeance is just gone. It's not a defensive at all. You could see it as a offensive ability, to be honest. That's how I see Shield of Vengeance now. It's not really saving anyone. Priest, Holy, all healing done increased by 3%, and it will be even more with the PvP talents. Shadow, it seems like it's a big buff here, because you have Void Tyrant damage increased by 15%, Mind Spike by 15%, Mind Flay by 15%, Mind Blast by 15%, and you will get more damage dealt. So it will be, instead of 15% damage reduction at all times, probably it will be 10%. For Shadow at least, and the Warm Plague damage increased by 15%. That will be offset by the PvP changes. I'm a bit less dramatic as my colleagues. I think Shadow is still going to be probably one of the best and most played casters, just because of the utility, the defensive capacities, and the throughput that he can have in the game. And the CC, of course. The CC is very strong, especially in Solo Shuffle. Outlaw, that is pretty much for M+. Warlock, Affliction, Agony damage increased, Corruption damage increased, Drain Sulk damage increased, Pandemic Invocation again increased by 20%. It still does no damage, so I would not really go for this talent. Seed of Corruption damage increased by 5%. It's pretty much for PvE. Shadow Bolt damage increased by 10%, and Siphon Life, which you never take, is increased by 10%. UA will do less damage as a result of this phrase. So backlash damage is no longer increased from increased damage dealt modifiers or effects that increase Sable's afflictions damage. So basically your Malefic Affliction, I think, the talents on the bottom left, where you're going to have unstable affliction damage increased by your Malefic Ruptures. That is not going to be, I would say, modified anymore. So you will not have some big one-shots with the unstable affliction dispels, which is probably good because it's looked like a bug, but now it's not possible to have that. Destruction, they actually buffed my build, which is revolving around Channel Demon Fire, which is hitting with just one cast 100k, and it can go even higher if you crit a lot. So this is going to be very nice, and people just do not kick fire damage, and if they do that, then you can have chaos balls like flying towards them, and that's actually pretty neat. Soul fire damage increased by 20%. Problem is the cast time, but also just it's dependent on if you crit or not. If you're not critting, pretty much it's the same damage as chaos bolt, but if you do crit, it is even higher than crazy chaos bolt. So that's really iffy. It depends on your crit percentage. I think you still play without crit stats anyways, because I feel like haste is so much like better, and mastery is like a good complementary stat, but crit is just not useful. Infernal and Blasphemy Immolation damage increased by 10%. I think in general Destruction will be very strong. I think if unchanged, but they still got changes on the PTR, which is even better. I think Destruction will be close to S tier with all the changes that you are going to see right now. I think the main enemy of Destruction is probably still Death Knights, but Death Knights are not as like tanky as before. I feel like I can kill a Death Knight whenever I'm a caster. The problem is the association between DKs and DHs, where you will not be able to cast anything because they have a lot of mini CCs. But Affliction Warlock, they might just move up on the tier list. Maybe depending on the damage that they actually do. If they do a lot of damage, it becomes better. If they are not doing a lot of damage, and it's still very dampening, because the problem is it's not really a dampening meta. We are around the burst meta, and a bit of dampening because of Soul Shuffle being ramping up so fast. But in 3v3, I don't feel like games are going so long, because after 2 or 3 goes, the game is probably over, depending on the comps that you're facing, of course. But let's talk about the PvP changes, and those are the most important changes in my opinion, because they are actually destroying Demon Hunter's capacities to actually survive. They are destroying the Glimpse PvP talents. They are destroying the capacities to actually do one-shots with Blade Dance, with Essence Break, and they're actually nerfing the consistent damage from Soulrend. Soulrend is probably the top 1 damage over time. Like on details, if you're watching Soulrend, the damage is probably top 1, top 2 of the whole match. and that is going to be reduced by 16.7%, which is big. Essence Break going to get destroyed because it's like divided by 2, right? 37.5% is pretty much dividing by 2. It is going to be essentially, so they might just change builds from now on, with Essence Break not going to be like insta picked, and Glimpse, the PvP talent might just not be taken anymore. Although the important thing about the PvP talent for Glimpse is the actual immunity for CC. I feel like if you're still be like very good with your Glimpse, and you know whenever the CC is going to come, you're going to actually be able to immune a lot of CC. But it depends on how you play. If you play for the defensive capacities from the 75% damage reduction, or if you play because of the CC immunity. And soul rending 40% is quite big. And it might be that demon hunters are going to be not S tier anymore. Maybe it depends, because again they have multiple builds. It could be that Essence Break is not going to be as important as before, and you're going to actually have a moment where they're still going to be strong because of their kit. They have a lot of CC, the defensive capacities are still very high, and they still have damage. It's not because they nerfed the burstiness from Essence Break and the consistent damage from Soul Rend that they are going to be useless. That's not going to happen. Evoker energy loops mana regen is reduced by 25%. It means that they can get now I've heard that it might not change anything, because some people referred to preservation being one of the best mana efficient healers, which I agree. But I feel like this is quite substantial, so we have to see what will happen. If they do get then Preservation Evoker will go back in line with the other healers. But I feel like they should buff the other healers instead of just nerfing the best. But that's my opinion. Although it's very annoying to play versus, I think if they nerf Shroud, I would be very happy. But for now, they didn't do that, so I think it will still stay the same. Arcane Mages, their like one shots is going to get nerfed. The Siphon Storm, I felt like it was very gimmicky. It's something like in 2s and maybe sometimes in 3s, but I never got one shotted by it, so I don't know. I feel like it's something that I'm not really used to, so I can't really speak about. But I never got one shot by Arcane Mage, at least never in the manner that I saw in the videos of Mid Jones. So I'm not going to comment on that. Frost Mages. Glacial Spike reduced damage increase from Mastery in Icicles by 25%. So you could actually stack Mastery to have those big one-shots with Glacial Spike. I felt like it was very clunky because you do need some haste. But you can have like haste with Icy Veins, but I felt like, again, going for full mastery is a bit gimmicky. You can still do that though. You can still go for full mastery, but I feel like it would be better, like Venruki said, to not play around Glacial Spike. Better with the Icelands actually doing more damage with the actual icicles and bursting like this. But I feel like people will still play Glacial Spike if they're playing with full haste, or sometimes I saw a few for Frost Mages going full crit, so they could actually always crit those Glacial Spikes. I don't know. I feel like it's still going to be very good. It's again very comp dependent. If you're playing versus 2 melees and you're only like the only caster of the game, you're going to have a tough time. But if you're playing with a caster, like let's say a Destruction Warlock, or you're going to play like a Wizard Cleave, any Wizard Cleave, you're going to have a better time, right? Monk. Their consistent damage is going to go up with Blackout Kick and Tiger Palm. Their damage from Rising Sun Kick from Mistweavers are going to get nerfed by the halved, like the actual additional damage increase in PvP is going to get halved. And we're looking to offset the oncoming PvE buff, so you're still going to be good. I don't think it's going to be a huge nerf, and it's also offset by the PvE buffs that is right now here, increased by 8%, so you're going to effectively only get nerfed by 5%, something like that, so it's not going to be very big. Windwalkers, Thunder Fist damage reduced by 40%. Very happy, very happy. How many times did I get one-shotted without even understanding why it happened? Like sometimes I'm not even stunned and I'm getting one-shotted. And yeah, I know they're preparing their burst, and you see that those fail lines and such. And then you're going to get Sky Reach, and you're going to get like one shot by Thunder Fist with Strike of the Windlord. But I feel like it's so gimmicky, and I'm very happy that it's changed into consistent damage, because I think monks are going to feel better to play as well. And in general, I feel like it's a win for Windwalkers on the long run. Right now, it does feel like a nerf, but it is not going to make you a B tier spec. I think it's still A tier, it's still very good, and they're going to be played more because Demon Hunters are going to be vanished from the air. I think this number will go down. This 26% Havoc will go down. Sky Reach increased critical strike chance by 30% instead of 50%. You're still going to crit most of your abilities. And Fist of Fury damage increased by 15%, which is actually insane because the damage is actually very high for Fist of Fury. But it is not Thunder Fist kind of feel. Like you can see, okay, he does Fist of Fury, I need to leap out, for example. Again, they want consistent damage, and that's good. Sustained damage is a good thing. Flash Heal increased by 30% instead of 20%. It's a buff for Disc and Holy and Shadow Priest. More for Holy, I think. Holy gets also buffed for heal, like by 10%. And Holy Ward Serenity healing is increased by 15% in PvP combat. Again, I think it's good. It's not only about throughput. I think the loss of Greater Fate is actually very big for a Holy Priest. More than you would know. I think Shadow Priest, like Holy Priest in Shadowlands, Greater Fate was one of those things that made you like more easily in capacities of following a chastise with a fear. Right now, if you chastise an enemy and you're walking up to fear, the problem is you're going to get either switched on or CC'd, or you're going to be scared to actually do that, so you're not going to do that. So that's the main problem of Holy Priest, in my opinion. And also the lack of CDs that you actually have in the game. The lack of double Serenity on PvP talents, they did add it in the class tree, but with a choice node on the res legendary from Shadowlands. So again, it's very like hard for them to actually exist in this meta. Shadow Priest going to get nerfed overall, but I think it's still going to be a bit offset by the buffs in PvE. Let's say Devouring Plague reduced by 25% in PvP combat. You should also see the actual changes here, and a lot of people are like glossing over without looking, but Devouring Plague is going to get increased by 15%, and now it's going to get nerfed by 25%, so basically it will be a 10% nerf, more or less. And you can see a bit the same for Mind Blast, Mind Spike. It's all the same vein, and you should understand that it's not going to get destroyed as what you are seeing right now. Although this is probably the biggest nerfs, the proc rates of Shadowy Insight and Surge of Darkness. But again, in my games, Shadow Priests are not really casting a lot, and often than not, they can just try to fake cast to get your kicks, but that's it. They're not even going to hard cast anything. So often than not, they are hard casting Vampiric Touch, sometimes a Mind Blast, and sometimes a Mind Games, but often than not, what they are doing is actually active CC, and that's it. So I think it's still going to be very strong. I think they're still going to be the most represented class and spec. They're going to be insane still. I think they're going to be very close to S tier still, because the utility, the CC, the defensives are not going to get hit, and the damage is not as bad as you would think because it gets offsetted by the PvE changes. Yeah, I think it's still A tier, at least A tier, maybe S tier, depending on the meta, because Demon Hunters got nerfed. But I think in general it's going to be very good for Shadow Priest to actually get nerfed because of it. I think that's the good way to go for nerfing Shadow Priest. They could have done like the Shadowlands route where you're not going to be existing anymore, but I think you as a Shadow Priest should be relieved to getting nerfed because of what you're capable of doing, because it's actually very strong, very strong. The one thing that you're not going to see is a shaman nerf. like Elemental Shaman nerf, but I think in 10.0.5 they will get hit pretty hard because they do not get nerfed at all these last patches. And I'm an Elemental Shaman player, so I do like my Elemental Shaman, but I do feel also that they do need a nerf somehow, some way. I don't know what, I don't know how. I think the Stormkeepers are going to get hit very hard. I think Stormkeepers are going to get nerfed very hard, and I think you can just go back to this video once it is actually going to get nerfed eventually. Assassination Rogues. Improved Garrots getting nerfed into 40% in PvP. And ARMS Warrior damage reduction, which is a 15% damage reduction, going to get nerfed by 4 seconds. So it's not going to be as strong. But I think Assassination is still going to be very strong, especially with the PTR changes at the moment. Warlock, Demonology. Demonic Strength unleashes a Fellstorm that deals 150% increased damage in PvP combat, was 400%. People were like actually mad that it was 400%, but in Shadowlands it was never a problem. Nobody took Demonic Strength, to be honest. It's also physical, so if you're like playing versus plate, it is going to get reduced anyways. And yes, the only thing that is very annoying is the actual damage that is producing without counterplay, like they are actually saying. The only thing that you can do is actually just rooting him, but it is very hard to track, so that's a nerf. And they do buff Tyrants by 75% in PvP combat, so it means that they are going to actually burst more with Demonic Tyrants, and they might change their talents around it. Dreadbite, damage reduction by reduced by 10%. So I feel like it's still going to be S tier, 100%. I think just people will have to now line the Tyrants, while right now people are not lining the Tyrant. People are actually actively ignoring it because it's not the one thing that is going to kill you. The one thing that is going to kill you is the Demonic Strength and the Nexus Portal. If you're like not paying attention, the Pit Lord is going to hit you with 30Ks. But that again, it's very, very easy to stop. Just fear the Pit Lord, just stun the Pit Lord, and you're good to go. But anyways, or banish it if you're a Warlock. Warrior defensive stance now reduces damage done by 15% instead of 20% in PvP combat. So now you will have a 10% damage reduction for a 15% counter set of the damage done. I still think it's not worth to press. That's my opinion. It is really not worth to press, except when you are facing a rogue mage and you know they're going to open on you and you have no capacity to actually respond to damage. Just do defensive stance and go back to battle stance whenever you are actually having uptime. That's pretty much what you're going to do. It's not going to be like in Shadowlands where you're going to stay into defensive stance all the time. That's not going to happen. I think it's still going to be very gimmicky in the sense where you're going to only have that in the opener and that's it. So anyways, this is pretty much my review about the class tuning incoming in the 10th of January, which is like 3-4 days from now. Please let me know what you think about this video, about the changes. Are you excited for 10 January? Are you also excited for 10.1.5? And yeah, I think it's going to be very nice. I think the meta will switch, although not as drastically as people would say that it's going to switch. So anyways, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Be sure to stay safe. We will catch each other very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.